Hi, everyone, and welcome to today's CDCT Live. I'm Jason Rader, your host. Today, we're going to be talking about optimizing hybrid cloud, the role of as a service. And with us today, we have two awesome guys who are going to be talking about this. We have Chris Kapusta, Principal Architect, here with me at Insight. And we have Phil Woudenberg, HPE Channel Manager for GreenLake. Welcome, gentlemen.
Welcome.
Hey, Jason.
All right, so that was kind of a mouthful from a title perspective, right? So optimizing hybrid cloud, the role of as a service. So tell me a little bit about what we're talking about. I'll let you do this, Chris. Tell me a little bit about what we're talking about. We're talking about as a service and its role within hybrid cloud.
Yeah, absolutely. So what we're finding is as clients move workloads to cloud, it's a very modern platform. It's a platform that's really driven by that consumption model. I pay for what I use. I get a monthly bill. I pay that bill and I move on. And what we're finding is not everything fits in cloud. There are still key workloads that have to remain on-prem, be it because of cost, be it because of intellectual property, security, compliance, whatever the case may be. And so now the question turns to, well, I have this very modern platform that I'm running from a cloud perspective. How do I bring that same? How do I modernize what I'm doing on-prem and lower operation costs? Newer platforms generally have more security. And how do I do it and consume it in a fashion like I'm paying in the cloud model? Maybe I no longer want to buy that 3 to 5 years worth of capacity up front. Maybe my environment's under constant change and it's tough to plan what I'm going to need for that period of time. So these as a service models really allow customers and clients to modernize their on-prem infrastructure. Do it in a consumption-based model where I'm matching now my financial model that I'm paying in the public cloud and really use it more in that consumption model set versus buying large amounts of capacity and compute ahead of time.
Nice, thanks. And Phil, obviously, HPE with GreenLake, it sounds like that was your value prop that Chris just talked about a little bit. Give us a little bit of background on GreenLake.
Absolutely. Thanks, Jason. And nice job, Chris. That was a great introduction to precisely the reason why HPE has GreenLake, right? This is a program that we've developed. It's a services agreement with our customers to give them access to the technology that they need the abilities that they can consume it, similar to what they do in that public cloud model that they seem to like. So, looking at it that way, we're trying to standardize how a customer uses technology so that they can focus and spend more time on how they need to run their business, let's just say more revenue and profit generating activities than necessarily managing and carrying and feeding a stack of hardware.
Got it. And so, I mean, is this something for everybody? Is this like the absolute replacement for public cloud, or is this something geared towards specific types of folks? What's kind of the best use case for this, or common use cases?
Well, that's a really good question, Jason. And the reality is we get asked that a lot. Some people today still even think that GreenLake is just an HPE version of the public cloud, that HPE has this big, massive data center or multiple data centers all over the country, and we're just serving up and slicing and dicing things for the customer. We do have that, but that's not specifically what GreenLake is today, okay? GreenLake is more of a solution around an on-prem model or in a co-location facility, and it's based on the understanding and the realization that the industry has had that while cloud has been good for so many things in their business, there are certain requirements that make it better for certain applications to exist in an on-prem or co-location environment. So that's where GreenLake comes in. We truly believe that the future is hybrid. It's not all in one way or all in the other way. That's what GreenLake is for.
Got it. So from a, ideal kind of client perspective, let's say I'm one of these folks that I was doing so much, public cloud sounds interesting, but I'm doing so much with like workloads, maybe with some hardware that's on-prem that just isn't the right fit. How would I go about, and maybe Chris, you kind of talk, what are kind of the clients, what's the logic related to kind of this exercise?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think there's a few different mentalities that kind of lend well to the average as a service model. You know, we've hit heavily on the hybrid cloud model where I'm consuming cloud in a certain fashion. I maybe want to mimic that on prem. You know, this isn't a hybrid. There's no requirement for hybrid cloud here. It could just be that I'm tired of capital purchases, these large multi-million-dollar capital purchases every few years, and deprecating those over 3 to 5 years. And I want a more agile way to consume infrastructure. And I think what we're seeing nowadays is the rate of innovation within customers is at a pace that's really unprecedented to what it's been in the past. New applications are coming online at an unprecedented pace, and data is being generated at a pace that I don't think we've seen in quite some time. And that's not only in data centers, but that's data at the edge. That's, we always talk about moving from those data centers to centers of data. So, what these as a service models really allow is an agile way to spin up and spin down infrastructure as your needs really change. You're not locked into something because I had to make a purchase. It's that consumable model of infrastructure, very much similar to what we're used to in the cloud.
But take me down a kind of what the thought process of a client would have to be. What if they've got a bunch of proprietary hardware on site? Is this a good solution for them, or is there something, maybe proprietary is the wrong word. What if they've got a bunch of hardware on site that's required for their solution?
Yeah, I say the ideal time to really start looking at this is as those service contracts start to age off our old on-prem gear. We start to look at those renewals, and we all know the way it goes. As equipment ages, it gets more expensive to support contracts climb. We always play that do I renew or do I just purchase new type of mentality. And really, that's a perfect time to start looking at these as a service models. And it's not a sweep the data center with everything you own today and replace it with an as a service model. It's really starting to look at those aging components that I know I need to replace. Things that age off generally don't get as many security fixes, and with things like ransomware and everything else that's hot topic today, we want a modern infrastructure that's supported and that's getting those updates. It's the perfect time to look at these as a service models and say, is it time to change the way we consume our on-prem infrastructure?
Chris, if you don't mind, Jason, Chris, just a add-on comment to that is, you're right. That is when we do initiate a lot of conversations with customers regarding the as a service model, is when they're looking at aging infrastructure and they're seeing a pretty hefty bill for a support renewal. And so that now they know that they've got to start writing another check. Right. And the question is, where's the best place to spend that? And in today's economy, businesses are looking for every possible way that they can become more efficient, not just with technology, but financially. So they're looking at that. And that's really where GreenLake, sometimes that's the entry point. And maybe another place is a customer who says, I have an aging data center facility and I like what these new co-location facilities, there's 1,300 co-location facilities in the country. I mean, the number's phenomenal. There's like 3 million people working for these facilities. The numbers are staggering, and it's growing at an incredibly rapid pace. So we're seeing companies saying it's time to close out this older infrastructure model and potentially close out this older data center, go to a co-location facility that's near my users, right? And I can still have that security and the compliance built into it. So, and then just a quick little side note, if some of the infrastructure that a customer has today happens to be HPE branded, that is infrastructure we could roll into a GreenLake agreement for the customer in conjunction with potentially upgrades and some newer, bigger, whatever technology. So.
No, I like that. And I think it's, we talk about the OpEx kind of approach to this, right? But it is an organization like HPE. I think you could even work a CapEx model to something like this. Is that correct?
Well, yeah, that's one of the unique things about GreenLake, actually, with some potentially the public cloud models. You, as an organization, you don't have a choice. You have to account for it a specific way through the federal tax code and state tax codes. However, with GreenLake, you have some flexibility there. Because of different ways that contract or that service agreement can be, structured. can be constructed, and how we identify the assets. Remember, in a GreenLake agreement, the asset that is being delivered that the customer has the full use of is not an asset that the customer has to own. The customer's relieved of all of the typical operational and tax and finance and accounting work that they would have to do with that hardware. They're simply paying for a service, and they can view it internally that way, and they can record it that way with their tax attorney.
Yeah. And I think, Chris, you also mentioned maybe earlier that when you're acquiring this new hardware, if you were acquiring it yourself, you've got to potentially scope how much of this you need right now and how much potentially I've got to use later. I mean, that's a significant exercise for somebody to have to endeavor with on their own, right? And
Exactly.
we've got to help people figure that out. And a solution like as a service, you can benefit from immediately having access to something right now, but also it growing and scaling out with you as you grow without having to acquire all of that and pay for all of that up front.
Exactly. We see that agility come in handy for clients that have, say, seasonal workloads, particularly in the retail space, where holidays tend to be a time where I need that extra capacity to handle that traffic. But the rest of the year, I can scale that down and not necessarily have that on my books. And with a traditional model, I've got to buy for the peaks. I've got to take into account when am I going to hit my upper percentiles that I need to account for. And really with the scale up, scale down model, it gives you that flexibility to say, I need it now, but I'm not going to need it in a month or 2 months or whatever the case may be. And it's, you're exactly right. It's no longer accounting, well, I think I need this much capacity and I'm going to add some fudge factors to it to make sure I don't run out or I don't have to make an emergency purchase. A lot of those math equations that we typically do when we're sizing out those capital purchases really go away from some of these as a service models.
Yeah, because people typically overbuy because they don't want to be wrong.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. and they're sitting on an asset that maybe they never use.
Well, and again, we talk about the rate of innovation. It's tough to know what we're going to need in 6 months nowadays, let alone 3 to 5 years. So I mean, it takes a lot of that guesswork, a lot of that sometimes unnecessary purchase out of the equation.
Nice.
Yeah, some of the statistics around that overbuy, by the way, I think Forrester put this report out and it's been backed up by several others, that typically in a traditional purchase, it's 50% more on the compute side and 60% more on the storage side. That's a lot.
It's huge. And I understand the rationale from the person, like if I were in charge of it, I'm going to err on the side of caution, right?
Yeah.
My career's on the line, right? So,
Yeah.
I mean, that's the natural way that IT guys or storage or infrastructure folks do. I'm not going to risk it.
No.
But there's definitely a cost of that idle, storage or whatever sitting there that's not being used. I think that definitely is something that you can leverage from this model. And one of the interesting things I think, Phil, about GreenLake is the way that you actually acquire it. I think the portal is pretty interesting. Why don't you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, well, it all boils down to, so we talk about hardware, we talk, basically we talk about infrastructure and delivering infrastructure to a customer's site, right? We'll call it data center co-location facility. Okay, so that's wrapped around a number of services. Okay, so there's a whole services component here we haven't really discussed, and we could have a whole other session just on that. But let's just say that it's a service, and because it's a service, we support it with a whole team of people. But outside of all that, we have what's called GreenLake Central. It's our management portal that all of our GreenLake customers have as part of the solution. And the GreenLake Central portal does some cool things around what Chris just talked about, which is trying to figure out, that he talked about, I think it was arithmetic or logarithmic, right?
Yeah.
But he talked about these things that we go through to try to figure out what my future is going to be. Right? What's that going to look like? And with GreenLake, we give some of those tools through this portal to all of our customers so that they can start to view their consumption or their utilization status today, and they can start to see what it might look in several different mathematical models to see what it might look for capacity. And then while they're in that portal, they also have an additional level of services that they can choose from. to the point where very soon we're going to be giving them the ability to point and click literally to increase capacity. Maybe, you know, that there's a merger or an acquisition coming into play, or a new product line's coming on board, and there needs to be substantial growth above and beyond whatever anybody could have foreseen to begin with. They're going to have the ability to just go ahead and select that through this portal, and it'll get delivered, stood up, and enabled for use.
Nice. I mean, and I think, Chris, certainly working with clients, the ability to have reporting and planning and modeling and those kinds of things is definitely something. I mean, that's the appeal to the as a service or the cloud model anyway, right?
Yeah, it's definitely it's something everyone struggles with. Forecasting capacity, be it storage, be it compute, it's the utopia really everyone looks for, and there's a lot of tools that do it to varying degrees, but again, it's more to bring in, more to maintain, more support contracts to have on that software. So I mean, it almost eliminates that struggle of how do I forecast capacity. You know, as Phil mentioned, new products come online. There's always discussions of, well, hold on, before we launch that, I've got to go buy infrastructure to support that and roll that into the project budget. And again, how do we forecast that? How do we overscope that? So it eliminates a lot of that. I'll say time to value, time to market that the business side is looking for when it's launching these new products. It's I need capacity, I add capacity, and it's not quite just in time, but we're getting closer and closer. So
nice.
Yeah, and Chris, just to expand on that a little bit, you know, the ability for the customer to view the current environment. So let's say that there is a storage component out there, and maybe there's a compute component out there that they've got. With GreenLake, there's a pricing profile based on what's called a unit of measure. What are we going to measure and bill against, right? That's just like the public cloud, right? You have to bill against something. Those prices are established essentially at the beginning of the agreement, and they're locked in for the term of that agreement. And as you guys probably know as well, is we haven't seen any big reductions in costs for technology recently. They've actually gone up.
right.
So for our existing GreenLake customers, this has really been an advantage because they've locked in those discounts. They've got the price. And when this unexpected growth requirement, all of a sudden I need to provide 100 terabytes of extra capacity, it's real easy to go to your calculator and do that number times whatever cents per gig per month. And now I've got the budget. I don't have to go out to RFP. I don't have to scope or size or anything. I just got the number. I can go right out there, report back to that business unit and say, here's what this is going to cost you.
Yep. Nice. All right. So you guys know I'm a big security guy. So, all right, Chris, sell me on the security aspects of something like this.
Yeah, and I think we've touched a little on that. Is it's really a nice way to replace that aging infrastructure that is maybe not getting security updates anymore, does not have some of the latest features, you know, around protection of data and authentication of users, and even multi-factor authentication of users. You know, the older something gets on the floor, the more susceptible it becomes to these vulnerabilities, especially as vendors really drop support for these older products to focus on new ones. So, you know, we want to get them off the floor as soon as possible, but again, we want to do it in a fashion where it's not a big purchase to replace all of that. So we can start to look at these as a service models as really an easy way to bring these new technologies in that's not entirely financially disruptive to the environment. I don't have to increase my budgets by X amount of percent every year to bring these in and get that aging infrastructure off the floor. And, you know, to your point, it's the security aspect, but it's also the operational aspect. Things are getting easier to use. Things are getting easier to manage. As I bring these new technologies in, I don't have to carry that legacy knowledge and the legacy support of some of these older products. So, and I can do it in a consumption-based model based upon what I really need.
Well, also, I mean, Phil, we were talking about the fact that some clients can't even move that data off site. So they've got to use a solution like this, right?
Absolutely. And, you know, to talk a little bit about security, in the first place, a lot of companies have invested a lot of time and effort into creating a security practice, right? That's specific to that company, specific for what they're looking for their particular industry segment and so on. And they've got a lot of ownership for that. And by the way, typically security encompasses a lot more than just the technology piece, right? This is a more of a unified security approach that a lot of companies have, where they're looking at the everything. They're not, buildings and access and all kinds of stuff. These are all integrated systems today. They're not just standalone items. With GreenLake, there's also, in this portal that we're talking about, there's another service that can be requested called continuous compliance, and it tracks the environment, and it looks at all of these requirements for things like PCI, NIST, ISO, all of these things regarding patching and updates and all that stuff. Because you're right, Chris, that's where a lot of these security breaches that we read about, it seems like every other day there's something else in the paper. It's about somebody forgot to patch something, right? And that's what the continuous compliance piece does, built into GreenLake Central and available as part of the service.
Nice. Chris, talk a little bit about the potential for maybe somebody managing a solution like this, like Insight.
Yeah, absolutely, and really, we see a lot of this go hand in hand. As companies and clients move towards this hybrid cloud model, they get used to someone else managing that low level infrastructure and really using their resources internally to level up and support other factors of the business that they see that gap. And with the as a service models, we see a lot of managed services attached around that to really just take care of the rack and stack, the patching, the daily management, everything that's kind of high touch, but maybe no longer high value within an organization. So what you get is you get from the financial side, you get the confidence that you're buying what you're actually consuming, or paying for what you're actually consuming, I should say. So you're not overspending from that perspective, but you also have ongoing management. You have somebody watching the infrastructure to make sure, security policies are being followed, infrastructure is secure, infrastructure is performing the way that it needs to support the business. And then that really gives the opportunity to take those knowledge workers that have been doing some of this in the past and level them up to other areas of the business. And I think everybody's got especially over the last 18 months, everybody's got to do more with less mentality, and it doesn't seem to be getting any better. So, managed services around that really offers a way to help ease some of that burden within an organization and bring that value up.
Nice. And so it's been a good conversation. I think, Phil, what I would love for you to kind of close out with is, what do they need to start if they're thinking about something like this? What's a good kind of a way for them to kind of think about this and engage?
Everybody seems to come at it from a slightly different starting point. I've been doing this for quite a while. I've been with this program since the beginning.
Worthy of note, this has been around probably the longest as a service.
Yeah. HPE, it's had a couple different names, but it's been around by a long time, well over a decade in total, and particularly strong in the last 5 years. We have billions of dollars worth of business already under this program, right? Thousands of customers. So this isn't anything new. We kind of stubbed our toe at the beginning, like every company does with a significant change like this, but we've really overcome a lot of that stuff. But some of these things, what we'll call is a compelling events, what initiates a customer's desire. Well, a lot of times it's a company that says, we've really got this cloud first or cloud mentality, and we need to look at that. And right away, we want to be there with our partners to be able to say, hey, we know probably you're not thinking of HPE in this light just right away by default, and that's okay. We understand that, but we would like you to consider the GreenLake service model, because when we start to stack up the criteria, what does cloud mean, right? It means this, and that. Then all of a sudden, GreenLake starts to line up pretty darn good, okay? Other customers have come to us. We mentioned before support renewals. Honestly, that's happens a lot. Mergers and acquisitions, companies that are looking to be acquired say maybe in the next 4 or 5 years, like the idea of not having an asset that they have to, besides track and depreciate and all that stuff, it has to become an asset that the acquiring company has to now purchase as part of the purchase of the company. And that's not always the best thing. A lot of acquisition companies like to see service models in the companies that they acquire, because it's so much easier for them to deal with it. In our agreements, we have the ability to move it from, ownership from one party to the other party, so not a big deal. And then just companies that are looking for more efficiency and more standardization between their new reality, which is a combination of public cloud and essentially a private cloud through a company like HPE with GreenLake, where we get to see these two platforms or these two things together. We actually get to see them on one screen. Our GreenLake Central portal lets us see both. And we can start to look at a VM workload in the public cloud and what that's costing me and what that's comprised of, and a VM workload in my private cloud, right, through GreenLake, and see what that's costing. And maybe a certain application is just going to live better in one place over the other place, and so you just put it there. That's, those are the desires, and GreenLake really has been responding to those desires in every way possible.
No, that's great. And Chris, I think what he just mentioned about kind of that, some people don't realize it's not public cloud or a solution like
exactly
as a sub solution. Yeah.
I was going to say, and that's, that's really the message we're helping with is, and I know, Jason, we've said this many times on previous LinkedIn Lives. It's all about the workload. And really it's, what we're doing is helping customers understand. Let us understand your workloads. Let us understand your interdependencies, and we can help you map out what belongs in cloud, what belongs on-prem. If it's on-prem, does as a service make sense? Does traditional models make sense? I mean, it's not a one size fits all. It's another tool that you can use to kind of modernize and change the way you consume things. And I think we're helping on that journey, because again, at the end of the day, it really starts with, what do the workloads need and where do those make sense to run? And that's where Insight and its partners like HPE are going and helping customers through that, kind of wade through that mindset, if you will.
Absolutely. Gentlemen, awesome talk today. I really appreciate you guys giving us insights, and Phil, thanks for HPE giving us the straight dope on what's going on and how you guys can help out.
Well, thank you for the opportunity. Appreciate it.
If you guys would like to know more about what we do here at Insight, please visit us on the web at insightcdct.com. Thanks, everybody. Thanks for joining us today. Thanks, gentlemen.
Thanks.
Bye.
Cheers.